Well, welcome. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful, cold Saturday afternoon near the end of the run of this astounding exhibition by an artist that we in the community hold near and dear, and people outside the community, and I think people that are checking us out in the streaming world know Willis Bing Davis. We're so lucky to have him in Dayton, and we're lucky to have been friends, colleagues with him for probably the 30 years of this, not probably, the 30 years of this organization's existence. So when we checked in on Bing probably about a year ago, because we like to see what he's up to all the time, and go by the studio and just see what's going on in his head, and the students and the artists and everybody that circles around him all the time. We got a sneak peek of this new series or new installation or these new thoughts that he had been working on, which I think really are a continuation of your protest art over the years that I think some of us know about, but not everyone. So we're going to talk about that today. And even though we plan exhibitions years in advance, when we see something happening that is so immediate and powerful by somebody that has such a complex mind, or has a complex mind and can articulate that through objects, and as Bing, we just want to jump on it right away. So our curator, who couldn't be with us today, Michael Goodson, had many meetings with Bing, and we pushed and we pushed, and we were so excited, and you had many conversations about this work, and we decided to name the exhibition Kneel, and I want to talk about that. So I thank you for being here. I didn't say at the beginning, I'm Eva Buttacavoli. I'm the director of the Contemporary Dayton. And we are here at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon to have a conversation with Bing Davis about his latest work. And with that, I just have to do my due diligence and quickly thank our presenting sponsors, University of Dayton, the Vela Family Fund for Social Justice, Dr. Robert L. Brandt, Jr., and our production partner, Mitosis. At the same time we opened this exhibition, we opened two more exhibitions, and the Walitha McGuire Family Fund is also sponsoring all of our exhibitions that where we talk about issues of social justice, so I'd like to thank them as well. And some advisors in the house. I'd like to acknowledge Merle Wilberding and Susan Elliott, who early on we had discussions with about both the Sam Levi Jones exhibition and Bing's exhibition. So thank you for being here. Oh, and CultureWorks, Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, and the Ohio Arts Council. Thank you for helping us make our programs happen. So I am going to be a little bold and skip forward because I think you know Bing and you may know his work, and if you don't, I'm going to ask you to do a little homework if you like, not right this minute, but we've got a wonderful gallery guide. We present gallery guides for each of our exhibitions, and there's a bio on the back and an essay on the front. But I want to get down to a little bit nitty-gritty about this exhibition in particular. So this gentleman, like I said, themes of protest art throughout your long artistic career, but particularly you were inspired by certain events to create the kneelers and the portable labs, and I know that you handed out information about the project. But I wanted to ask you first a little bit about your interest in protest art, or how you bring your African influences, your object, your ceramic, your material influences to creating protest art?
Good point. I never really visualized it so much as protest art. In 1966, while teaching high school at Colonel White High School in Dayton, Ohio, I'd had an experience in '65 with Martha Baines, the art supervisor, and an art teacher by the name of Armin Martino, to create a New Vision Children's Museum. And that changed my life. What it was taking a Title I grant and in the basement of Longfellow Elementary School to establish a special museum of teaching using art objects from around the world. And so we had this small grant for Title I, and we set up this museum. But what it did for me, being able to take a cornhusk doll from the Appalachian area and a doll from the Zulu culture in South Africa and a Navajo doll, and then to work with children about play and dolls and family. We did the same thing with objects from all aspects of life, birth, puberty, marriage, death, and after death. That changed me. And so I stopped teaching art, and I began to teach people. And I use art as agents of change. So while I want to teach art and the elements and principles of art, I'm also concerned with enhancing one's life. And so that also meant it applied to me as well. So what I did, use my art, is to reflect what I see. But I also had a historical connection to that. Because in high school, I remember going to the library and looking at art books and seeing this great painting called Guernica by Picasso of the bombing of this small Spanish town by the Nazis. But I also looked and saw Francisco Goya's May the 2nd and of the Civil. And then I found Kathy Kollwitz, who had these beautiful images from the Holocaust. And so I saw art being used to address concerns in society. So it's not protest me, it's an extension of what I see and wanted to use that. And so all through as I developed my what I call my cultural awareness, the more I looked at African people around the world, I saw the interconnectedness of my culture with that. And so to me, it's just an extension of what I see, but using art to address those things that concern me. And at the same time, wanting to make them as well-crafted as I could, as creative as I could, to deal with the art, but dealing with what I see and what I experience. And so this is an extension, but I did find that what has been happening the last couple of years forced me back to be more focused and more direct. So instead of being more esoteric about what I see, I began to focus in on some things that was bothering all of us. And so as a result, I could relook at Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. And then I made the connection with George Floyd and saw the difference between taking a knee and receiving a knee. And putting those together forced the viewer to look and think about that. So as that person bends down to take part in Colin Kaepernick, then he also can think of 9 minutes and 42 seconds of a knee on George Floyd. And that gets us thinking about what do we need to do to enhance this spirit. And so it's really just an extension. I just appreciate you coming in to the studio and seeing that and feeling it, because what I was hoping that someone will not only see it but feel it. And so it's just a natural step to want to celebrate Breonna Taylor. And so making a vessel to hold one good luck cowrie shell in memory of Breonna Taylor is to reflect my joy of working with clay, of constructing vessels and containers, but also addressing it to something of concern in society.
Beautiful. Can you walk us through, because everybody always wants to get in the artist's head. So you've worked with these materials, found materials, ceramic-made materials, etc., the masks,
Good
and what
point.
we've got by the way, if you hadn't seen the installation, the kneelers are usually spread throughout the gallery on the floor. Right now, we have laid them up against the corner of the wall, so they're not exactly in their correct location, but we wanted to have the talk in this space. So when you felt you wanted to manifest, those ideas, and you look around and at the materials that you go back to that you feel have power, how do you put those ideas together? What does that look like? What does that?
That's a good point. Good point. I haven't thought about that, but I learned early on in studying art and looking at cultures that everything has energy and power. And as we live in a contemporary society, we call it a throwaway society. We buy something, we use it for what it was, then we discard it. But it still has power, it still has energy. And so I found a great joy in finding common things in my environment as I'm walking, driving, that other people discard. And when I pick it up, I start to see other potential. And then I also learned to embellish this with from a friend's building called Mendelssohn's, of all these thousands of things. When I would go there, it started in 1967. We started in 1967 of utilizing found objects, and particularly a concentration of them from Mendelssohn to embellish what I do. And there's a joy in being able to take something that someone else has discarded as having no more function and no more value, and then finding a way. Because also, that's what we do as teachers, because so many kids are thrown away as having no value. So to be able to make that connection. A classic example, the day that our police chief, Bill, announced that he was going to retire, I started a piece called Dayton Police Chief Search Mask. It's been a while since Chief Bill said he was going to retire. I had found a portion of a discarded automobile tire on Highway 35. You drive by, you see this discarded. And I drove past it, and something caught my vision in peripheral as I was going. I said, I said, that thing's here tomorrow. It's talking to me. And when I came by again, that was again. So I got off 35, and I got back on and stopped, and I'm sitting there waiting till I can run and grab this piece in between the traffic. I know they thought I was crazy, and throw it in the truck and take it home. And laid around for a year. Chief Bill says, I'm going to retire. And that's when I said, I'm going to do a mask in search of a new police chief. And I started. When I finished that piece, which is now hanging, 2 weeks later, the city of Dayton announced who the new police chief was. This piece is called Dayton Police Chief, inspired from Maasai necklaces, which I call prayer beads. So there's about 500 little things on there that were gadgets, transistors, nuts and bolts that I view as prayer beads, inspired by those wonderful necklaces that the Maasai women wear. So all this wire I saw coming out of this radial tire reminded me of that. 2 weeks after I finished it, they announced who the new police chief was, who happened to be a gentleman from outside who was familiar with prayer beads. that I can't wait to meet the police chief because I think I knew who was coming. And each of those beads that are put on there is put on there with a prayer, just like each of these kneelers has nails in it. A prayer goes in with each nail in hopes that we can save our children, that we can improve life. So I'm tying in my historical culture, and when I look at what's happening in the sculptures of the Congo and Nkisi with how to use that today. So it seems almost as natural for me as breathing. That same thing and that same approach occurred when I said, I'm so concerned with the police brutality and what I see that maybe I can address that too. So 2 years ago, I began to think about redesigning police bullets that would ricochet and boomerang and return to the police who shot it, if he shot it out of hatred and racism. Addressing a concern that I see that maybe pulling all this knowledge of art, culture, history together may be able to impact and change. The kneelers, thanks to Michael Goodson, our new curator, just a brilliant young man that has talked with me and got to work with. And he had a concept that really fit right in with what I was doing, because he was able to make contact with the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School football team. And the footballs had been in use in practice for years. And we asked them, can we have some of the old football, even if we needed to replace them with purchasing new ones, because we wanted balls that had been touched by these young kids with their visions and dreams, who went out and ran routes and caught balls, fumbled balls, tackled balls, touched those balls in hopes and dreams of one day of buying a house for their mother, one day of being on top of the world, one day of being all pro, one day with running routes for Joe Burrows and others. So I wanted footballs that had actually been in use, so that I could give prayer and hopes to those young boys. Not only the young boys that are running up and down the field, but those men who've sacrificed to coach them and guide them into adulthood. Not only them, but also those mothers who fixed those extra meals and drove them to practice back and forth, as well as the people who were in the stands selling popcorn to buy the things that the schools couldn't afford to buy for the football team. So I wanted those young boys to be a part of this, so that as I'm putting those nails in and prayers, that they will be watched over, protected, guided to become productive young men. Yeah. So it's this art is, for me, has been that kind of a journey. I learned early on that it was more than just painting pretty pictures that hang on the wall, that art was an extension of life and culture and had been a part of all people, and a primary way people transmit what's the value to them. What's the value to them? I don't know if I addressed it. If these vessels for Vienna are all, I think, except, no, they all are found objects of wood that have been assembled into vessel-like form, and many of them came from one old East Dayton mold factory that was discovered when the cannery was first being built, that a lot of artists used. So I just start them as starting points, and then take the knowledge of line, form, design, texture, balance, rhythm, vessels, hand building in ceramics, throwing on potter's wheel, and then just make things. But 90% of them are just things that are found and discarded. And the reusing of them, then I'm tapping into that energy and power.
The hammering of the nails, the use of the cowrie shell. I mean, those are themes in your work, and those are themes, like you said, that
Exactly.
you bring from your study of history of African culture in the Congo. If you go into any great museum with a collection, you'll see African sculptures with the nails and the cowrie shells. So
Exactly.
you're also extending that history
Exactly.
to a contemporary issue. Which
And you know, the biggest thing is that in 1973 was my first study tour to Africa, that I would go collect information, convert it into curriculum material, and wherever I was teaching, incorporating it in, and wherever I was doing workshops or working in the community, I somehow found a way to weave it in. But it really was about the biggest thing I found. That 73 was the first, 94th was the 10th and final trip to Africa. I'm no longer going back and forth and studying. But what I found was us. That every human being that's alive today, yellow, black, red, or white, evolved from an African woman. And an African civilization started there. And the shapes and the forms and the colors that I pull and use in my drawings and my paintings, the spirit hand, are only ones that I see that also touch other cultures. Whether it's Navajo blanket, or what was the Maya, the Inca, or what was the Vikings. I see those same shapes and forms and color, and I see them used in the same way. Birth, puberty, marriage, death, and after death, the 5 stations of life that all human beings go through. And each group of people have their own way through ceremonies and rituals of perpetuating and continuating. And they use music and dance and words and drama to do it. So what I found was us. So I come to know that I don't know who this is, but that's my sister. I don't know who this is, but that's my brother. Here's my sister, that's my brother. And I will approach them as such until they no longer merit me treating them as a brother. But on first encounter, I already can be embracing. And the art and the music and the dance is what gave me that understanding. And allowed me to go. My wife and I spent some time in St. Petersburg, Russia, at a school for the blind that we still work with. This is the 15th consecutive year of working with Groat School for the Blind and Visually Impaired in St. Petersburg, Russia. But it allows me to be able to do that. But the same thing in East Dayton, or West Dayton, or Centerville, or Northmont, any place in the world and any room, because of that understanding through art, I can walk and be totally me, and be at ease and be comfortable, and know that what my mother said is true. You will never meet a stranger. You only meet people you haven't met before. So that whole approach, but it comes through art. It comes through being able to make art, being able to have people respond to it to the point that it can support me and guide me and direct me has been fun. And I don't know where this new things will take me, but it's been great. We had a discussion, my wife and I today, who's been helping me with the Boomerang project. And coming up, I know I need to find a behavioral scientist. I know I need a chemical engineer and metallurgical engineer, because we're going to find a way to put that chip in the grip of that gun of all policemen, so that it will read through the sweat and the gland the chemical equation of the racist mind. And if that is a racist person, that gun will jerk and go off. But we're working also on the ricochet, because that 14-year-old girl that got that bullet in the dressing room with her mother from that ricochet from that police bullet bothers me. So we want the ricochet bullet to only hit an inanimate object, like a doorknob or a handle. But as soon as it hits it, it will activate the boomerang. And that bullet is going to be able to reduce speed as it searches for that racist, bad cop shooter. It won't, if he's not a racist, I'm not saying who's a racist, but we're going to be able to find out. Because what my scientists are telling me, there's a chemical equation to whatever mindset you have. And we were talking this morning, my wife helped me looking at the police lie detector reading through the sweat glands and the muscle reaction. So I'm only an artist, but I'm using the creative approach. But I can find other people who can help me. Because if we can find out how to determine who has that mind that needs adjusting before they jump out of a car at a park in Cleveland and in 2.5 seconds shoot a kid called Tamir Rice. 2.5 seconds. Even after he said he gave him 2 commands in 2.5 seconds. So what is happening in the world, I'm aware of and concerned about, and I try to find a way to, what can I do? I'm only an artist. I'm only one person, but what can I do to help us look at and address and maybe not only have a positive life, but resolve some of the problems that we see so that other people's lives can be richer and enjoyable too.
Thank you for that. Bing, you've covered a couple of things that I wanted to bring up so beautifully. The museum or the art educator in me is so taken with how you put together items that are objects and ideas that are meaningful to you, but that are also universal, and create these new things to make these ideas clearer for people. I always call it, artists help people come to a new understanding. But not only that, you're also helping us see the possibilities of the future. The idea of the project labs, the ricochet bullet, that was the first piece I saw, and I had never seen your work like this. And it's a scientific, not experiment, but it was like being in a lab. And then when you started to tell me about it, it was the artist's creative mind helping us see the way something could be in the future. And you're doing all of that.
Well, I'm enjoying. I feel blessed to be an artist. I feel blessed to be alive and still working. And I find not enough hours in a day.
That's right.
Not enough time, but it's been rejuvenating. It's opened up. I'm still doing the drawings. I'm still doing the pottery. I'm still doing all those other things. But this is a whole new direction that has really given me a lot of good food for thought and good energy, and reinforcing. I spoke to them the other day and asked about that little radio-like thing there, and we were talking about the Matrix or people talk about. We just had the shooting, the 4th of July, not 4th of July, but New Year's Eve. Bullets whizzing by, zing, zing, and where people talk about, I can just feel them going right by, or hear them just zipping by. So we rig this up to slow down the sound. And when we slowed down the sound, we found it was actually a soundtrack. Zzz, zzz. And the first one that we dissected was from a famous singer by the name of Elvis Presley. And when we slowed it down, we recognized the song. It was Return to Sender. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, because you and I have talked about this, and you talked to many people about what can what can the difference be for Dayton that we can make, that artists can make by bringing to light or bringing to understandings, these ideas to create a dialogue? How can we help Dayton?
Well, I'm hoping other museums and galleries and cultural complexes will do what Go has started. Matter of fact, I recall you making a announcement a couple of years ago of the future before this place existed, that you were thinking of going in this direction by finding a way to address art who's not always popular, and you have actually done that with the first 3 shows that are here, even going back to Zachary and Curtis Barnes. And so we can do more of that and provide those opportunities, because we're missing a great deal of creativity by being so rigid and structured and maybe closed. But it's a lot of good thought. We've got a lot of good poets, a lot of good writers around here, a lot of good musicians. I'm so glad to hear that we're about to get a new studio at 721 Springfield Street for movies and film. We're in Dayton, Ohio, and whether I remember reading about Edgar Casey, the great mystic, who came here to try to figure out why Dayton is Dayton, why so much happens, and he's got it. That there's some things in the heavens that point here that puts energy here, that allow for what has already occurred. But that energy is still here. We just haven't tapped it.
I think it's probably pointing to your house.
Well, my house is Dayton, so yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping will happen, because I see a lot of good young scholars in this community, good young photographers, painters, dancers. We need to tap that. We need to tap that and utilize that as we move forward in Dayton. And the beauty of it is that it's going to come from all parts of town. It's not just coming from one source. It's not just coming from the arcade. Yeah. It's coming from all over.
It's got to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have talked, and you've covered such a wonderful array. I'm really glad that you talked more about I call them the portable labs and the ricochet. But I'm wondering if you all have questions that you'd like to ask Bing. I think we've got time for some questions about the work. We didn't talk about the quote on the wall yet. We could do that. I know that was a conversation between you and Michael. Does anybody have any questions about the work or questions for Bing? You bring up a wonderful point. I'm so glad to hear that. And you made me think, we just lost McMurph, which used to be out at Dryden Road. There are a couple of states, Michigan is one, and Ann Arbor is where I think it's located, where they actually have depository for building for materials just like that, where you can take it that
creative people can come and tap into it and be able to utilize it. That may take a concerted effort, but I can see that happening. Yeah, we do. There's a couple around the country where that has actually been done through profit and nonprofit structures. That's a good point. Good point. Someone asked me earlier, and I didn't get answered, but they asked about how did I happen to dedicate this particular exhibit to the two policemen that are on the wall, Tyree Broomfield and Ronald Lowe. A few years ago, 2015, I began to develop an idea that I called Blacks and Police Reform, the Broomfield Low Art Culture Kindness series. I haven't gotten much response on this from Ohio, but I am getting some from outside of Dayton. What I was going to do, I dedicated this exhibit to those two men who I knew, because a lot of my earlier work that dealt with police reform, these are anti-police brutality dance masks, that the police department thought I was against them. And I'm not. I'm only trying to rid them of bad apples. But and I think I did the wrong thing when I presented this to them, is that I had too many of those past images. I was just showing them that I've been working on this since '99. But what this series was about was, in the name of Broomfield and Lowe, is that I had selected successful art activities that I had done in the classroom that would fit working with groups of youth and groups of policemen together to help bridge that schism between the urban area and the police department. So that's what I'm proposing to do. I may need to find a better way to do it. But the reason I chose those two men is that both of them were artists that I knew. I knew from an artistic standpoint. I didn't know them personally, didn't know their personal life, but I knew them through art and through respecting them of what they were doing as policemen. So I dedicated to those this whole project called the Broomfield Low Art Culture Kindness series that I would do with the police department and with urban youth and urban adults to bridge the gap and improve that situation. I haven't gotten a response because this was in 2016 and 2017, working with the history department who helped me do the research. But I am getting some feelers to come to other cities to do this, and that's always the case. I'm at the airport leaving, going someplace else, doing something I'd rather be doing at home. But that was the reason. Tyree was a great draftsman and designed women's clothing. Ronald Lowe, only a few people knew, and I heard one today, was a great singer. The myth is that one of those bad public situations where we were confronting the police department and Ron Chief Lowe was there, and in the audience had to talk to this angry crowd. He stood up when it was time for us to speak and walked up to the podium, and on his way he began to sing, "I don't feel no ways tired. I don't feel no ways tired." He began a gospel song that by the time he got up to the microphone, we no longer was angry at him and realized that he too knew the situation and that we would work with him. But it was through that voice. And I just found out just today that he actually was singing with a local group here in town during our doo-wop days. But this was a part of that overall aspect. I don't know what we're going to do in our community, but I plan to address directly through creative ways anything that I can do that will help the new police chief and help our communities and help us improve that situation. And I want to do it home. I don't mind helping other communities, but someone said, work at home first. So I'm going to try to do it here.
That's wonderful. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have an art community support of the new police chief?
Yeah.
Come at it from that direction.
Yeah.
That'd be something.
It really would. Really would.
Yes.
Thank you. You know what? I hadn't done much of that interaction, and that grew out of a vision that Michael, the new curator, had. And we took a chance because it was not a normal situation. And he convinced me and convinced our director that we're going to try this. And it was great. It was a good, even me, I enjoyed taking a knee on these. I saw some of these as almost urban Adinkra symbols because when I took that knee, when I stood up, I felt taller. I felt taller. When I took a knee on another one, I thought, can I sit out here for 9 minutes and 42 seconds? And made me think, and so that interaction, and we used to call it guerrilla theater, where we used to go and put on events on the corner where we need to address a concern. So I see us again going back and tapping because we got some natural entertainers in this community. You go down to Levitt and see one of the concerts. You can look on the stage and see entertainment. You can look in the audience and see entertainment. So I see that as another possibility. I appreciate you bringing it up, too. Yeah. That's good.
So for the audience, what we're speaking about is inviting you, the public, to kneel on the football, kneel on the kneelers. They're a little bit against the wall right now, like I said, but when we disperse, we'll pull a couple out if you would like to do that as well. If I can ask a question now, too, because I was thinking, I had a conversation with Christina Parema and Vaca Parema, who were here yesterday, who are dear, longtime friends with us, and they couldn't come today, but they sent their regards. And we were talking about the action of kneeling and all of the meanings that it has, both in religion and history, and how it was Kaepernick that made made it more well known as a symbol of protest. But we were trying to think, and I'm wondering if you can comment on how that action became a symbol of protest, and just kind of relaying that to the other actions that we know in our culture of symbols of protest or symbols of how shall I say, commentary or as such. We were talking about the Olympics, etc. And it's again, I feel artists are so special. We all feel that, but for you to take that action without even it's not a film of that action, but you're referring to that action, and it has such resonance. So you felt that power, but talk about that symbol.
Two levels. When we look historically and culturally, we saw that moving into the lower space has always been we may say child space, but as we get to be adults, we stay here. And some people, and we almost forget that we came from that lower space. And when you go back to that lower space, I remember I used to do once a year a workshop for the Ohio Watercolor Society for those artists who were having creative blocks. And they'd come to the conference and they could sign up for my workshop, and I'd take them to a series of activities and workshops we did to help stimulate creativity. And it always began, they couldn't come into my workshop space until I was ready. But I wanted them to come in together. But when they came in, whatever room I was at in the hotel, the whole door would be blocked with paper, brown paper, except down here. But on the front it said, please come in. But it would have this paper blocking the door that you'd have to stoop down to come in with your kit. And every time each of those artists came in, when they came in, just that activity of going through it, when they would step in, they'd step on bubble wrap that I taped on the floor. And and I'd have incense burning and images and sounds of water and just natural things, winds and birds. So by the time the workshop, they were ready. They were ready. They'd opened up. They'd gone back into that childlike space where we discover things. But kneeling is down there. And we know some cultures, you lay your whole body out. And if you're in a place where people are special, you go to that space. You go to that space. We need to go to that space more often. I was at Walmart, and as I was going in, I noticed something on the sidewalk. So as I walked by, and they said, I know about 4 or 5 people standing around with me, just looking down at me. I got down there. You know, some people went by and said, and other people went by, but others some people just looking. And all it was a little bit of water and some oil. And the colors and the shapes and design was so beautiful. I just needed to pause and enjoy it. Just pause and enjoy it. Instead of just going fast and that space is special.
It's special.
Yeah, and that space is special. You always, you get on the floor and play with the grandkids. Your knees may hurt, but you feel better. They have a hard time getting up, but boy, you feel better. Any other question? This has been such a wonderful afternoon. I really appreciate you coming. We didn't know what to expect in the weather, and as Jenny said, we're so glad we didn't have to cancel. We're looking forward to this, and I always enjoy it, and I grow, and I grow, and I appreciate the support this community has given me as an artist right from a youngster on.
I think with that, we will call it a talk, and I think you'll be hanging around a little bit.
Oh, yeah.